we are very glad to have with us Zacharias Mavroides, one of the most active young filmmakers in Greece, active in script writing, directing, and also teaching film enthusiasts, such as myself on previous courses, teaching mostly around storytelling, not strictly script writing, but storytelling in its wider sense. So good evening, glad
Hello.
to have you with us. And from the previous introduction, we feel that your participation in our podcasts is crucial since you have made films quite linked to their place and time, as we will elaborate later on. I'm mostly referring to The Guide, your first film centered around Athens through the eyes of actually a tourist guide, such as the title suggests. Also, Defunct has two time and place anchors, one on the period of the economic crisis well lived in Athens, and also in the Civil War era, an earlier period in time which is quite crucial for Greece in general. Most importantly, in terms of cultural heritage depicted on film, you have your documentary Across Her Body, which follows a quite fading lately religious tradition on the island of Thirasia. Very important for Thirasia, but kind of becoming extinct, I believe. You will have the chance to elaborate on that. For those unfamiliar with Greece, Thirasia is a very tiny island right across the very famous for its sunset island of Santorini. So let's start from the latter, which is closer to our pilot's overall mentality and the project having as a theme thematic tourism and cultural depiction on screen. So, how did you start digging in Thirasia and the religious traditions around it? What was the initial plan for this documentary?
Sorry, I just cannot. I have to comment on this. This is Thirasia we're seeing there, and that's the thing with Thirasia. There are like 1 billion pictures taken from Santorini. They are taking the volcano bay, which you see when you are in Santorini, and on the backdrop, it's Thirasia. So Thirasia is an island that has been photographed like million times, but very, very few people have actually.
Know how many know the name of
yes,
of Thirasia.
They don't know the name. They haven't crossed the volcanic bay to go there. So I was there in Thirasia for another project. I was part of an academic program that was ongoing there for 7 years, which was studying the history, basically, of and the architecture of the island. And so I had the chance to be there for this other project with my DOP, Zoe Mada. And that's how we discovered this religious tradition that it's called 15. It takes place every year for 15 days from July 31st until August 15, which August 15 is the big celebration of the Ascension of the Virgin Mary, which is a number one. I mean, maybe it's a very important celebration for Greek Orthodox. So we started shooting there without really having a very clear concept of what we're doing, because basically what happens is, I should explain maybe even better. Thirasia is a very small and island that has really not a lot of tourism. And on the south end of this island, there is this monastery which is devoted to the Ascension of the Virgin Mary, like which is obsolete.
Many monasteries in Greece. It's very crucial for Greeks, for Orthodox, this time of the year.
Yes. So this monastery is obsolete. There are no nuns or monks living there. But every year on July 31st, there are some locals who have made this voting to the Virgin Mary, which is a lifetime voting. That every year we will come to the monastery and I will stay in the cells of the monastery for 15 days. And that's what they do. So for 15 days, this monastery, has guests, has people staying there. Their main task is to prepare the monastery and the church for the celebration on the 15th of August. And apart from that, it's like a ephemeral society that takes place there, and the way they live there, it really resembles Greece of the 50s, because they don't have, let's say, running water. There's not electricity. It's everything looks like a flashback. So me and my DOP were really attracted by this weird
This
cluster.
time machine, because it feels
Yes.
like a time machine actually.
Exactly, it's a time machine, and it's even more striking that this time machine is right next to Santorini, which is like
5-star hotels,
yes,
private pools, and
yes, everything, helicopters, etc. So that was our initial push. But well, along the way, this turned into something way deeper and more complex, also on a personal level. We focused on the women that are there, because basically it's women that are that attending the churches, and more specifically to women. So this documentary, it started kind of like a portrayal of this tradition, but along the way it turned into in the heart of it is the biographies, let's say, of these two women and their relationship with us in a way.
it's very interesting. We have discussed that also on the courses we had together. That you start from a very different point than the one you end up with in documentaries, because the people, the situations take you there actually. So I guess that's what happened to this one.
Yeah, there are, I mean, all sorts of genres under the documentary umbrella. There are sometimes you have a script. You have if you're doing a research, it might be way more channeled how you begin and how you end. But in this kind of documentaries where it's like an open field, and you're open to create relationships with the people you're shooting and be driven by that to all sorts of narrative directions, then yes, you can. It's kind of a surprise where you get, and that's what makes it extremely interesting.
Great. In terms of logistics, actually, in technical aspects, it was filmed in a quite remote location, because, as we had said, Santorini is located far from Athens, but easily reached, especially in the summer months. You have even charter flights. We have flights coming from all over the world, and also helicopters for the people that can get there fast. But Thirasia is a bit difficult, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I mean, there's nothing there. And on the location we were shooting, there wasn't even electricity. So we stayed in the main village of the island, and we had to charge our batteries and go for shooting, and then return to download the material from the SSD cards we were recording. And there was 1 year we had a problem with an adapter, and this was a big issue. I had to take the boat to go to Santorini and travel to go to look around the electricians on the island to find someone who could fix a gadget.
A small adapter.
Yes, it was an adapter that was crucial, because it was the one that connected the camera with the exterior battery we were using.
So maybe in this kind of case, it's useful to have a DIY knowledge and background to do something yourselves.
I mean, yes, you need to be prepared for that. You need to be prepared that you won't have access.
You're not shooting in the capital or at an urban environment. So was that a challenge? Did it become creative? You had to come up with some other alternatives. Maybe do some other shots, maybe find other ways to do it. Would you do that again, actually, in such a remote location?
Yes, I would. I think, this was shot like 7 years ago in 2014-15, and I think now it's even easier. I mean, if you are prepared, yes, because you might not have access to the guy that knows all about the gear, but you are in amazing locations. That's the whole point. So of course it's worth it to go to.
It's worth the difficulties and the logistics and the whole process.
I mean, that's the whole point. You're there for the location. Yes. So get prepared in order to be able to shoot the location. Otherwise, yes, why go there?
That's one of the points made through the thematic project, that it is crucial to have location awareness. It is crucial to focus on not only the natural beauty of a place, the sun and sea model, but also on the cultural significance of these kind of places, like a monastery in Thirasia, like Thirasia itself, and so on.
Just to give a counter example of, I was really not well prepared with the sound. I just had with me a Zoom recorder, and one of the first editions, not and there was no sound engineer. It was just me and the DOP. And basically, I had this Zoom recorder and a mini tripod where I would put it. After a certain point, we also added a mic on the camera so that the actual footage, the sound from the camera was a bit better. But again, it wasn't really useful because the camera, which was a Blackmagic, had somehow it made the machine made some noise, which was captured by the microphone on top of the camera. So we had average sound equipment, but the fact that we were in this place, which was so quiet and so tranquil, it made the sound be
Only
useful.
nature sound,
Yes,
actually.
we could use the sound in the end.
Great example of what the location can provide you. Even if it creates some difficulties, it smoothens out some other kind of difficulties. How did the locals react? Both the ones on the island, if I don't know if how many there are, and also the ones participating in this tradition within the monastery. Did it feel natural to them? Did you see any kind of exaggerations or other kind of reactions, or maybe they felt that they didn't have their privacy? What the situation was?
Overall, they were really positive and open to us being there. I think that it was entertaining for them as well to have some new faces around. And
I guess they didn't have new faces in decades.
Yes, they have a lack of new faces, generally speaking. So it was nice for them. Of course, this is always based on human relationships. So we had a good contact. It might have been otherwise, they might have, if they didn't like us or if we didn't really like them, things might have turned otherwise. But generally speaking, they were quite open to us. I think they, at least at the first year, because we went there 2 years to shoot, although in the editing, it looks as if it's 1 year. And especially in the first year, for me, it was really obvious that it was entertaining for them to be in front of the camera and to go, let's say, play themselves for the camera. So maybe it was a bit exaggerated, maybe not, but I think the actual documentary plays with that. I mean, we're not trying to fake that we're not there. It's quite obvious that we're there, and you can many times feel that they might be a bit playing for the camera, but it's also. This doesn't make it less natural or less true, because the way one plays for the camera is really sincere.
It's the way you see on the news if someone goes in front of the camera, so it comes natural. Did the Greek hospitality work? Did they get you some food? Was there some cooking involved?
Yeah, because they cook there. They live there, so they also cook. And after a certain point, because they like to have company with them while eating. I think there was a debate who's going to feed us every afternoon. So yes, we had a lot of, especially these tomato burgers. How do you call them?
The stuffed tomato.
No, tomatokeftedes.
Tomato balls, tomato.
Yeah, well, something like that. Really yummy.
They have a tradition, and Santorini, the small tomatoes are quite famous. Not just in Greece, but worldwide. It's a sought after product. Not like San Marzano in Italy, but it is quite.
No, but in Santorini they have their own specific type
species of
cherry tomatoes, which are. They have this way of cultivating which is dry. They don't put water, so they grow in a very different way. Really, but they're really extremely tasty.
It works.
Yes,
actually. In terms of the final outcome of the documentary, do you feel that you ended up with some kind of cultural documentation, a kind of archive of what is happening in that specific place and time?
Yes, I mean I think the goal of the project was not so much as strict documentation of the actual process. It does document. I mean, the narrative is based around these 15 days. It begins when they arrive there, and it ends at their departure. And you see what takes place there. But I think the story goes beyond that, and somehow through their lives and their stories, I think it's a more abstract and wider documentation of a lifestyle of Greek people, basically from poor background, and their beliefs and their values and their relationship with the church, and how all this is expressed in their way they living, in the way they decorate their spaces and how they dress, how they speak. So I think it's a documentation of something more abstract and more precious to my view.
Do they do that? Do they come to the monastery and decorate each year, make a small space of their own?
I mean, each family has a cell, is given a cell. So they go and they decorate their cell the way they want. It's not that they bring like a lot of stuff, but that's the beauty of it. You see, the minor adjustments they do each one in their own cell. But
a small object can create a sense of space for each one.
How they arrange their tiny kitchen, how they arrange their tiny beauty spot, let's say. Yeah.
Interesting, very interesting.
Yeah, the documentary pays a lot of attention in this kind of, let's say, set design details, because I think they are really eloquent. They tell a lot.
They can tell a lot about
in a very abstract
about the
way.
person and how they.
Yes, the person. They have a big cultural value.
I think we have discussed it on the courses how important it was for the previous generation, the semedaki, the so-called semedaki, as a decorative item everywhere, on TVs, on pianos, on small types of furniture. So it is kind of a cultural representation of the era. Now let's explore the guide. Is it a representation of Athens at each point of time, at the point of time it was
the guide was shot in 2009 and it's screened in 2010 and 11. The guide is not just a guide; he's an architect's guide. So it's this guy who used to study architecture, and he wants to become a tour guide, and so he tries to become an architect's guide. So he's basically his group is are students of architecture from abroad, Erasmus students of architecture. And so the whole guiding thing is focused on the architectural side of Athens. And that's why they go to areas like Kypseli, which back then in 2009 it was like really out of the how do you say? It wasn't a point of interest. Nowadays it is a growing up and is a neighborhood that has it's growing and attracts younger people again. So I think this film really plays with the architecture of Athens because there's also a subplot with some Greek friends of the main character who are working on a architectural contest, yes, about the identity of Athens. So there is this leitmotif of some visualizations of like bold interpretations of landmarks of Athens. So the film basically plays a lot with the architecture of Athens. It's mainly focused around the touristic areas, but not only. And through this architecture, I think it plays. Architecture is a vehicle to talk about our national identity, the national identity of Greeks, and actually Athens stands as an allegory for that, having the Acropolis in the middle, which is all this glorious past, this. Symbol of extreme magnitude, and all around it's this.
Sit on it and just relay on it. It's there. We are Greeks. It's the Acropolis, and sometimes ignore some of the rest. And sometimes we're not visiting the Acropolis. I recently went to Acropolis, and sometimes we forget it. It's there. Many times I feel that it's there. I don't need to visit it, but once you go there, you can again revisit this greatness. Why they built it. What was the democracy like then? Because they all decided to build the Acropolis collectively, and it's good to have it as a reminder every once in a while.
And for the majority of the Athenians, Acropolis, they don't see the Acropolis because they live. Athens is really big, so really a small amount of people see the Acropolis on a regular basis.
Exactly. And I remember on the guide, the main character always carries with him tools, architectural tools,
Yes.
and things like that. And I think this comes from your background. Actually, is it?
Yeah. I mean, I studied architecture, so I mean, the spark of this film was I was reading a book that talked about architecture and film, and it said that architects, although they are prestigious characters like doctors or lawyers, they don't make good protagonists because architecture, the process of architecture is not dramatic as a lawsuit might be, like a court case or a surgery. So the process of building a building is not really, there's not a lot of drama there. So
It has drama, but it cannot be depicted as drama.
Yes. So I was intrigued by that. So I said, okay, I have to make a film with architects because
that produces drama. Actually,
yes, just try to produce some drama from architecture.
It worked actually.
Yeah, I mean the drama doesn't come from the architecture exactly. It comes more in a more abstract way, let's say.
And it also kind of subtly depicts the era, the crisis, the things happening in Athens.
It's before the crisis,
at the
actually.
time.
It's in 2009 it was shot. It was right before the crisis. Yeah. Well, there is
Some part of.
well, the thing is that there are certain elements in the film. These
Like strikes,
visualizations are said that are somehow making fun of landmarks of Athens. One of them has a Godzilla. There's this image of a Godzilla like rambling through Athens and destroying everything. And it was really interesting because during the first years of the crisis, there were all these marches and so much riots, and which were extremely in the spot of the media. And the audience that saw the film after that thought that this was a reference to that, which wasn't the case.
Allegory.
So it happens with films and books. They gain notions that were not intended just because time passes and things happen and they are reflected on them.
Refer to things that were not the initial reference point, but it can become an allegory in the minds of a viewer in the aftermath of something like the crisis or the marches or things like that. Comparing these two productions, which one feels easier to you, both in terms of logistics and both a documentary as opposed to a feature film between Across Her Body and the guide? What were the differences between shooting in the capital of Greece, Athens, with all the means around you readily available, and in Thirasia, which is very remote?
I mean, apart from being in a remote place and you don't have access to equipment, then you don't have access to your house as well. So, and it was a very small budget, so we were, me and my DOP were staying in the same room, so it's not like you go back and you can have a lot of privacy. So you need to be a really good team, unless you have the budget to be, have your own rooms, etc. But again, somehow, if you're shooting outside of your base, it's hard to avoid becoming, spending all of the day with the same people. So that's a crucial difference.
In terms of how you handle as production a documentary and a feature film?
Well, in my case, the documentary was really a very easy production because we're just two of us, and it was really easy to take any decisions. We had total artistic freedom. It was really a pleasure. On the contrary, with the guide or with the other projects I've done ever since, which were fiction, you have a budget, you have a producer, you have all sorts of factors, time frame.
Everything becomes different in terms of organization and pre-production and how you organize your work.
Yes, and basically the actual shooting is not as creative as in documentary because there is the script, there are all sorts of decisions being made beforehand. So it's basically you need to execute as best as possible your initial,
The documentary actually kind of guides you as you go?
I mean, in this specific because there are other documentaries which are more scripted, the production is more
Quite
similar to
to the
fiction. But
feature film.
in this kind of documentary, yes, it's really enjoyable to shoot in that sense that it's really artistic. You're full open to.
So I
it's
guess
really
it
creative.
feels more liberating to the creator, actually, to
Yes,
have
totally.
the
And this
ability
also
to go with the flow.
expands to the editing process because you have to figure out what you're going to say in the editing. While in fiction, you have again the script as a reference. Of course, you might deviate from that a little or a lot, but it's still there is a very specific starting point. You have shots that try to interpret that specific starting point, the script. So it's not as creative.
Great. How do you feel about the rebate, and how do you feel it's affecting the Greek filmmakers? Is it making the projects more viable? Is it giving space to indie, let's say, production?
I'm not sure if it helps the indie productions. It definitely had helped the TV productions to flourish. There are many. I think in order to profit from the cash rebate, you need to be a sustainable production company on the first hand. So if you're just a beginner with a new project, it's not so easy to profit from that. Now, it has also brought a lot of foreign production, so this has created a problem for us Greeks that there are certain, let's say, assistant cameras, yes, or all sorts of assistants are not easy to get nowadays because they work in foreign productions with way better fees. Yeah, now it's kind of in a transit, the whole cash rebate thing, because there was this intention to merge it with the Greek Film Center, which is in theory it's a good thing because they should be together. But it was supposed to be.
We are waiting for it to sell.
Yes, yes. It was yes. They said they're going to do it, but they haven't seen anything actual yet.
Is there a gain from all this? Namely, at the moment, it's difficult to find the workforce for the audiovisual production, but at the same time, do you feel they are kind of trained along foreign, more experienced technicians? Will we see better Greek audiovisual stuff in the near future due to that, let's say, collaboration with international productions and blending with more experienced filmmakers?
I guess so. I mean, it's let's say location managers. I have a friend who's a location manager, and he has found himself working in situations, like cars have to, having to find a highway outside, in the Peloponnese, from which a car will fall, and then another car will fall, and then a helicopter will come. So yes, in order to arrange such a shooting and see such a shooting take place, it's it's something you could never get in a Greek production. But on the other side, you can also say this: you will never make use of the knowledge you get there because you will never find the Greek production to shoot such a thing.
Yes.
So it's kind of
if this know-how can move on to the Greek productions as well.
Yeah, that's the thing that on one hand we have all these productions coming from abroad, good, bad, mediocre, with big budgets or average budget, and on the other side we have the Greek productions who are struggling to make their ends meet because the Greek Film Center has a really small amount of money to give to support the Greek films. So it's helpful, but at the same time, unless Greek productions manage to have more money from the Greek Film Center to support them, all this knowledge that comes from there will not ever be applied to Greek production.
Yes. It's a more holistic system to have it all working together and be viable, actually. Yes. What else would you like to see in terms of audiovisual support initiatives? As a filmmaker, yourself, what would you like to see to support other Greek filmmakers?
There are many levels of this. One thing would be I would love to for the state to pay more attention to education, to find a better way that the education around cinema in Greece is established not only in let's say university level but also in the lower levels, how younger
More
audience
technical.
are connected to filmmaking. The budget that the Greek Film Center has, this is I think the number one problem. I mean, because we are like by far the last ones in the budget per capita in Europe. So this is a huge issue. And the last, I think, maybe something that has to do with the distribution. How we're lacking a cinema that is devoted to Greek films. We're lacking because it's a big struggle to make a Greek film, and then it's an even bigger struggle to get this film in contact with the audience. Yes, and in other countries, like for example in France, the state really takes care, makes sure that the French films will have the proper access to the French audience.
They have been doing this for decades, I think. So we might have the chance to get some good or best practices from these kind of countries and see how we can adapt them in the Greek reality.
I think, don't quote me on this, but I think in the past we had a similar law that obliged the theaters to devote a certain amount of their programming
slots
to Greek.
It makes sense.
Films.
They might nag a bit, but I think it makes sense for the creators of all this material, this kind of films. As we said before, discussing the guide, your initial studies were on architecture. How do you feel about how a city or a rural environment, not definitely an urban environment, is depicted on screen? Can a film actually do justice on a location? Or should that be a thing? Should a film focus on a location, or should it be location free?
I mean, if it's a fiction, I don't think it owes anything to any place. You can depict the place the way you wish to depict it. It's kind of a moral issue. The way you can choose how do you depict people, you can decide how you will depict a location. So verisimilitude is not an issue for me. At the same time, I think that locations are extremely fruitful narrative tools. And probably because of my studies in architecture, I think I have a big sensitivity on this. Sometimes even maybe more than I should. In the sense that I think that, okay, I have this shot of a building and I think it communicates certain things, and it actually doesn't, because it only communicates that to very specific audience, that being architects who can understand, okay, that this building is from that age or whatever. But I think, yeah, architecture and generally space is a very eloquent tool of narration.
And we have seen it in famous films like The Great Beauty, where we can see Rome or Woody Allen films which focus on very specific cities which actually become a part of the narration. They become a part of the movie, and in some cases maybe a character of the movie in terms of how you can see a city or an environment and the characters interacting within this very specific environment.
I think Wong Kar-wai works starts his projects from space. First, he finds the locations, and then he figures out the story around it. Maybe he has the characters, but the locations are crucial to his
a fast
creative
food,
process.
the stairs where the couple meets.
Yes.
So there are some very specific scenes that take us to this specific location and time and space.
But again, it's a fictional. Just to give you an example, in my previous film, my last film, Defunct, which is it's set in Papagou, which is a very peculiar suburb of Athens, because it's a suburb that was built in the 50s by a general, Papagos. That's why it has this name. And all the houses were given to army generals. It was somehow like to honor them for what they have provided for Greece during the Second World War and the Civil War that followed. And so it's a very, very conservative area, because all families are like from army generals. And it has it's like a kind of like a garden city. It has a lot of pine trees and big streets and small
Big
houses.
squares. And
Yeah. But nowadays, Papagou is not like purely what I describe. I don't know, 50% of the houses are torn down and are now like new modern buildings. So in the film, we try to create the old like συνεκτική.
to combine to construct the
A coherent image of how Papagou used to look
Used to
like.
be.
And in order to do that, for a certain exterior shootings, we had to change suburb. And we went to Philothei, which is
which has this characteristic.
has kind of the same character and is yes, it's more less spoiled, let's say.
But in Papua, I have seen people marching in a military way, so
There
are still a lot of army people living there.
Many people who saw the film and knew the place, I mean, gave me exactly this comment. Okay, you really portrayed the Papagou in a way that does justice
In
to the
its
place.
essence,
But it's
in
interesting
how
that I
we
had
know
to
it.
go to another suburb to shoot Papagou, to shoot what would make justice to Papagou. And it can be like this. I mean, filmmaking locations work like this.
It has happened. I think it has happened in many films. One more recent example, which happened due to legislation, actually, is I think in one of the Jason Bourne films, where they filmed Athens in Spain.
True. Yeah.
It happened because due to legislation they could not film a riot, so they had it in Spain, filmed in Spain, and it was supposed to be Athens. So there have been some cases due to location, due to the buildings that have changed, as in defunct. So it happens, and we get to go to another location. How do you feel about there has been a lot of discussion throughout the project on how films end up as tools for location awareness? We have seen it in Greece with Mamma Mia. We have seen it with General Captain Corelli in some cases. So personally, I have seen it in Amorgos, where after the Deep Blue, many friends bought houses in Amorgos. They go there every year. The island had an influx of too many friends within the following summer. So how do you feel about this happening in very specific places depicted on film, and then having lots of visitors due to this kind of promotion?
Well, I think it's a kind of, I don't know, there are many ways to see it. You can see it as a romantic side effect of cinema. And then you can see it as a problem also. I don't know. It depends. I mean,
It's a small island that cannot host too many people.
Yeah, like there
in Croatia, I think after Game of Thrones, they have problems with too many people coming to the specific sites that depict the castle of Game of Thrones. So it might be not sustainable eventually.
Yeah, but I think this is I mean, the actual thing that a film gives a place a certain value. I think I cannot say anything bad on that. The thing is that this comes under the umbrella of tourism, the touristic industry, which has grown extremely in the last year. So in that sense, this becomes a tool for more tourism, and then suddenly you have like if you had 3 people that would come per year to check, now it's like 3 million. So this turns into a problem.
It might become a problem. We actually had that problem. I felt that this can become a case in Venice. Where it can become too crowded, where the people have been actually, let's say, forced to leave their home to an Airbnb and go to the mainland. So the whole message of this project, of Thematic Project, is how to have sustainable experiences of tourism. And one of these cases, we feel through film tourism. For example, you can have tourism all year round, because a film enthusiast could visit Athens to go to a very specific location. It's indifferent to him if he comes in August or in January. So we feel that it might be a tool to extend the tourism period for some cases. Or, for example, in Thesprotia, which is another partner of the project, showing locations used in Beckett from Epirus. So we felt that, and we saw through research that it might be a case to extend the tourism period in Greece in specific locations and so on. Not as a purpose, meaning that we have to get Greek locations within film, but how to sustainably utilize the promotion through a film. Again, sustainably and without interrupting the community which could be affected always.
Yeah, I get the idea. I think it's always good to see it in the bigger spectrum of how much tourism can this planet sustain, because I think we are past the healthy limit since a long time now.
The same case is for Santorini.
Exactly, because I've known Santorini since I was a child, because we used to go there because my mother worked there in the excavations. So I've seen the island, turn into this monstrosity of a touristic, of tourism.
The same in Venice, because where the locals cannot stand the tourism.
But I think in Venice they put a margin, like they blocked the...
they have a limit now.
A limit of boats. In Santorini you see amazing... The logistics of the islands are incredible. You have this really small island, and it receives, I don't know how many thousands of tourists every year, and there's amazing car jams and all sorts of infrastructure problems.
It could, if you are not careful with that, it could be, let's say, not good experience, not bad always, but not a good experience both for the visitors and the locals. So you have to keep a line in between what's good for all of them. So hopefully we are waiting for your next job, your next film, which is, could you share a bit about it?
Yeah, my next film is The Summer with Carmen. We're now finishing post-production, so it will be out sometime this year. It's a comedy, and it takes place in Athens. It pays honor to a very unique landmark of Athens, which is Limanaki Beach, which is a rocky beach at the south of Athens. And the rest of the film, it takes place in the center of Athens.
No islands, no exotic locations.
Well, there is a very
just a small spoiler.
A touch of Castellorizo, which is the most extreme island of Greece. Extreme in the geographical sense.
Exactly.
It's at the very end, the very
but
east.
It's quite symbolic also, because it's a very tiny island, very remote.
Yes.
Difficult to go there, but so I guess it has its significance.
And with a lot of political background regarding it's kind of a painful issue between Greece and Turkey.
Bankruptcy was
also
announced.
Exactly. It's where the Prime Minister
went.
It's
a very heavy message for the recent history of Greece.
Yes.
So we're looking forward to that. Thank you for this interview, and we're glad to have you on board on more activities of INTERREG Greece and hopefully a new project of the Thematic Consortium. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me here.